cop in Harlem. All of my Dominicanos right there up on Broadway. Pulled me back to that McDonald's, took it to my stash spot.
Former child actor, talented writer, and blogger Zack O'Malley Greenburg was created and mentored by spirited writers. His rather famous author father is Dan Greenburg, and naturally one of Zack's toughest critics, but also his biggest fan. O'Malley Greenburg has turned out his first book, a biography of hip-hop's heavyweight iconic rapper Jay-Z, who is not just another rapper, he's a business. It is my pleasure to welcome Zack O'Malley Greenburg to Vancouver, to Studio 4, to tell us more.
Thanks so much for having me on, Fanny.
A New Yorker to your core, I bet.
Indeed, born and raised in Manhattan, and I still live there today.
And a writer to your core, I bet.
It's in the blood.
When did you start writing professionally?
I started writing professionally at age 14. My first article was a video game review for Boys Life magazine, and it was a pretty good gig. I started doing monthly video game reviews, and I would get the video games before all the other kids on the block did, because the company would send it directly to me to review.
And when did all the writers in your family start helping you write? Because your mother's a writer, your father's a writer, your honorary stepmother's a writer.
Well, they were very helpful all along, but you know, in different ways. I think the thing that my dad did was he was just a very ruthless editor, and he always treated me like an adult. When he you know, when he read my stuff when I was 10 years old, he would treat it as a professional article. And you know, I became so disheartened at one point because I would be writing these essays for school in 5th grade, and he would be saying, "This is, you know, you really need to start all over," and I would get an A on it, and I was, you know, I don't need to listen to you. But over the years, it really helped having such a harsh critic, because when he finally said, "I like this," at some point in college, you know, I really knew he meant it.
So when you were at Yale, did you think about doing something else, becoming an astrophysicist, or?
I did. I actually, I really wanted to work in a Major League Baseball front office, and every summer I would send off my resume and my letters to the Yankees and, you know, whoever, you know, but I always got, you know, sorry, we already have enough interns. So I kept up with the writing. I worked for my college newspaper, and I eventually got an internship at Forbes, and that's how it all started.
Steve Forbes was here. I didn't ask him about you, but I'm sure he would have said you were a fine professional writer. Empire State of Mind linked to the Yankees in any way?
You could say that. Jay-Z has a line where he says that he made the Yankee hat more famous than a Yankee can. There's a scene from the Yankees' 2009 victory parade where I went, and he was a surprise performer. You know, so there's a little bit of a connection.
Well, what piqued your interest in a heavyweight hip-hop hero?
Well,
why him?
I think when you talk about hip-hop moguls, it's really Jay-Z and Puffy are the two, you know, the two biggest names. Russell Simmons also, but you know, in terms of artists turned moguls. It's funny, the way it came about was one day I was sitting in my bedroom, homesick. It was the middle of the summer. It was horribly hot. The air conditioner was broken. I had a sore throat, awful. And I get this email. I'm about to delete it. It looks totally generic, looks like junk mail, but it says book project opportunity or something. And I thought this must be junk. And then I looked a little closer, and it said it was from Penguin, the publisher. And so I, you know, oh, well, I'll open this. And sure enough, it was an editor asking if I'd be interested in writing a book on Jay-Z or Puffy.
And what did you know about hip-hop? And what did you know about Jay-Z, Sean Corey Carter, his real name?
Yeah, I knew actually a fair amount. I had been working for Forbes for a few years by that point. And every summer I would put together this hip-hop Cash Kings list that measured the top earners in hip-hop. It got some play in the press, and it actually inspired, the first time we did it, Jay-Z, Puffy, and 50 Cent did a remix called I Get Money, the Forbes 1-2-3 remix. And so after that, there had been sort of a series of articles that we'd done and that I'd written. And I think that the editors at Penguin just Googled hip-hop and business, and they came up with my stuff. So.
Put it all together. Brilliant.
Yeah.
Take me back to his roots. Hard scrabble, in the hood, the projects.
Very much so. Jay-Z grew up in the Marcy housing projects in Bedford-Stuyvesant, Brooklyn, which is one of the toughest sections of Brooklyn in the 80s. And you know, one of the toughest times, and really a time when a lot was underfunded, and I think the authorities kind of turned a blind eye to what was going on there. But he was so poor that, you know, he would have to go to his friends' houses just to eat. because his family, his single mother didn't have enough money to always put food on the table for everybody.
And single mother was single because his not so good father left when he was about 10?
That's right. His dad left when Jay-Z was about 10 and just kind of disappeared from his life. He had some substance abuse problems, and decades later, they actually reconciled shortly before his dad passed away.
Wow. How did that scar him? How did his father leaving scar Jay-Z?
I think it really it made it hard for him to trust people. And he said in various interviews that he became closed off, and he never wanted to feel that loss again. He never wanted to make himself vulnerable to the point where somebody else could do that to him again. And if you look at his various relationships over the years, you see he kind of, especially in the middle, kind of early and middle part of his career, he kind of pushes some people away after they get a little too close to him, or maybe if they try to get too much of his money.
Right, and he's a cold pragmatist as a businessman, no
Certainly.
question.
Yeah.
So in his formative years, he got into a bit of trouble, dealt a few drugs, mentored by some pretty good drug dealers.
Indeed. One of those guys is well, maybe I shouldn't say his name on here, but I talked to him for the book research, and he kind of told me the whole story about how he was living in Trenton. He was a friend of Jay-Z's from the Marcy Projects. He was living in Trenton, New Jersey, and he invited Jay-Z to come down to Trenton and kind of help him start up a sort of informal business there, selling crack. And from there, they kind of expanded further south. Back then, New York was the main entry point for East Coast drug imports, and so, New York to Trenton, and then Trenton to points further south. And with every city that they went, they would mark up a little bit more because it was farther from the source. And
Sure.
Like any good businessman, I guess, expanding their territory.
Sure, and as you know so well, many of those kids get into the drug trade because they will do absolutely anything to get out of the hood.
Exactly.
I know that sounds a little Hollywood, but it's probably true. Whatever it takes.
Yeah, I mean, and that's the attitude that Jay-Z had, and a number of rappers, that's kind of, that's their MO. Got to get out of here. And the way it was explained to me by one of Jay-Z's early mentors, a guy by the name of DJ Clark Kent, he said, when you're living in an apartment complex with so many hundreds of people, there's just such pressure on you, and all you want to do, is get to a quiet place, and whatever it is that you can do to get out of there, you're going to do it.
Sure. Were there people in Jay-Z's life who refused to talk to you?
Sure. There were a number of people. The book was unauthorized. I approached Jay-Z's people about being a fly on the wall and interviewing him and such, and they said, "What's in it for us?"
Of course they would.
I hadn't really thought of it that way, but it kind of makes sense when you look at the trajectory of his career. But so there were a few people, even people who I had interviewed previously for work, who said, I can't talk to you for this book because Jay-Z doesn't want me to.
Right.
I did run up against a couple, like sort of Jay-Z constructed brick walls, shall we say. But I was really pleased with how many people did talk to me in the end, and a lot of his associates from early on, a lot of people who even still do business with him today, a lot of artists, Questlove from The Roots, let's see who else, Fab Five Freddy, is a big one, DJ Clark Kent,
right.
Some of his early mentors, Jazzo and Damon Dash, yeah.
Jazzo was a big mentor.
Big time. He was actually the first rapper to ever get a record deal with EMI, the British record label. And in the late 80s, Jazzo, who was he was 4 years older than Jay-Z, I think, and kind of really helped him hone his craft early on, lived near him in the Marcy Projects. And so in the late 80s, Jazzo brought Jay-Z to London with him to help him record Jazzo's first album. And that was kind of Jay-Z's first taste of the good life, and they drove to the release party on New Year's Eve in a stretch limo, and kind of gave Jay-Z a taste.
Ooh la la,
Yeah.
a life of Gucci and fine cigars and fancy cars and beautiful women
Exactly.
coming up for me.
Exactly.
The quiet kid with the gift for rhyme. Who recognized his innate talent early in the game?
There were a couple different people. I think Jazzo is one of them. Jazzo really helped him, become what he was, I think, in a lot of ways. But DJ Clark Kent was this guy who was, again, a few years older, kind of more established on the scene, though. And he was the one who kind of kept. He met Jay-Z when he was in his teens, and he kind of kept nagging him. You know, even as Jay-Z got more and more involved in selling drugs, you know, he got more and more. DJ Clark Kent would kind of pop back in every now and then and say, "Give this music thing a shot," you know. And he had a lot of interesting things to say about Jay-Z.
Was it he who convinced Jay-Z to stop selling drugs, to get out of the bad business into the music business?
I would say there was a steady drumbeat from DJ Clark Kent on that front. I think Jay-Z knew that if he could make more money selling records, that he should go do that. And I think he had a couple of specific events that happened that really made him, kind of jarred him into making that decision full time. And one of them was getting shot at by a rival drug dealer. The gun jammed, fortunately, and he was able to escape unharmed.
Shot at, not hit.
Right.
Maybe he'll rap about that. Perhaps he has.
Right, yeah.
I'm sure. But he shot his brother.
He did.
Accidentally, or what was that about?
It was sort of a confusing altercation, but Jay-Z was a teenager. His brother was having substance abuse problems, and his brother actually would steal Jay-Z's jewelry. And so one day he stole a ring from Jay-Z.
Right.
And Jay-Z was able to obtain a gun, and he went and sort of tried to threaten his brother, try to scare him. And the way that I was told by a couple of people who were friends with him at the time, they said that Jay-Z was trying to shoot sort of over his brother's shoulder just to scare him, but he missed and hit him in the shoulder, and his brother had to go to the hospital, but he was okay.
It's an incredible life, really, and a crazy journey, because not long ago, Jay-Z was on the cover of your magazine, Forbes magazine, with Warren Buffett.
That's right.
When we come back, we'll talk about the business part of Jay-Z's life.